Hello everybody, I'm Alexy Khrabrov, the organizer of SF Text, a new meetup devoted to text mining, NLP, search, AI, and basically uncovering human intent behind the text. And here we are at Lithium, and we have Stefan Gower with us, who is the creator of Topic Scout, a new company and new technology, which is very interesting because it says it can do high-quality topics at enormous scale, which we didn't previously see. So it's very interesting. At first, I want to ask Stefan, can you tell us a little bit about your background, your technology tool set, and what interested you in this space?
Well, my background includes work in large-scale expert systems, including some unusual ones based on sort of almost functional flows that were very large. And those did forms of classification as well, very differently. I got into the idea of classification because I got exposed to some tools whose names I won't mention, but they just didn't work very well. You could get them to work for maybe 100 topics with a lot of effort, maybe 200, and it was clear it just got worse from there. So it seemed to be an interesting problem, and that's how I got into it. Really, how I got into is one day, it's the only time it really happened in my life, I had an epiphany walking around a lake. And it was very quick. It's the only time this has ever happened to me. And it sounded like, well, that might really work. It took me 4 months to run the experiment, and it was very promising. And that's how I got into it. And it turns out to be a lot of work, much more than I ever anticipated. But there is a way to actually do them topics at scale.
Interesting. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to your talk about that. But why topics? You know, there are so many different applications and algorithms. Why topics specifically? Well,
I think a lot of people are in engineering thing. You see something, are exposed to it, may come away sometime, and you think, that thing didn't work very well. Could I do better? I mean, it doesn't really matter what subject area it is, but a lot of people in technology, that's how we think. Then sometimes, we have the observation, and maybe something comes to us, or we figure the problem's worth attacking, and it kind of leads from there. So if we do find a way where we think, well, we could do better maybe, and maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, then maybe we go attack the problem. That was kind of the case here. Though it was interesting when I started, and it started a long time ago, like 2001, 2002. People then, when they talked about topics, experts in the field would say, well, who would need more than 100 or 200 topics? I'm really not joking. Now the world has changed a lot in the years that followed, and almost a decade and a half ago, people don't question the importance of topics anymore. I think people have a very different attitude to them today.
Yes, because of all the social media and the web and all the text content, right? And I think ad targeting especially, there is a lot of interest in very specialized topics. So you mentioned you were working on expert systems before, and what's fascinating to me in the computer science, it's very cyclical, so some things rise and fall. So there was a time I remember, I might be dating myself, but expert systems was a thing. It was hot, right? And then there were a lot of books on expert systems and how you build expert systems, how you manage the knowledge, and then it all gone away. And I'm wondering, where did all this expertise go, right? Like, what do you think is happening? Like, are we reinventing the wheel? Are we discovering this all over again, or did this knowledge get transferred somehow to the new incarnations?
Well, I mean, we don't have a long time to talk, so I can just say that what I've done in Topic Scout has really nothing to do with rule-based expert systems, because they don't scale. And Topic Scout is all about scalability. So if something doesn't scale, it doesn't matter. I mean, from day one, my goal was any algorithm wouldn't scale, throw it out the window. I thought from day one from going to 100,000 topics. It was my goal from very early on. So expert systems, actually, if you want to study them, the rule-based ones, teach you a lot about scalability problems, because generally they're very hard to maintain. So in this case, they're almost a counterexample. And what I wanted to work on was things that would achieve scale and maintainability, very importantly.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your tool set? What programming languages are you using? What technology are you using? Because if you need to scale to that size, is it a distributed system? Is it on single node? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I can. Though I think in this particular case, it's more about the algorithms, which are very proprietary, so I don't talk about those really. which is really where the scale comes in. The language I happen to do it is in Java because the language I'm comfortable with and I like, but it could be done in some other language as well.
Okay.
And in terms of scaling, the system as it stands now is designed a certain way to allow it to be parallelized. But that's very much by design. But as we all know, don't parallelize something until it works. Someone who taught me, a guy who was very smart, said to me, build things so you can optimize them, but don't optimize too early. In the same way, you might want to design something, you can parallelize it, but make sure it works first before you go, do the final step. In terms of the stack, besides Java, it does use MapReduce. The MapReduce is really a means to an end. In this case, but it works fine. Actually, it actually really quite well actually. So Java MapReduce. It uses file systems a lot, not really NoSQL. It's usually very text. Text has a lot to do with files, right?
Yes.
So there's just a lot of files. I mean, I can't remember for 10,000 topics, it's something like, I don't know, is it 20 million documents or something? There's some very large number of documents involved in it. I mean, don't quote me on that number that I'm speaking to a camera now, I'm pulling it out of my head. But largely it's about files and processing them well.
Okay, I mean, this is what we as programmers know very well, right? Text and files. So this, I'm very comfortable with that. And Java is an interesting and good choice. I'm also happen to help organize SF Scala, and I'm always interested in kind of doing scientific computing on JVM. So I wonder, do you think that JVM is kind of a good choice going forward for this kind of work? Do you find, I mean, it's just a convenience for you? Do you find gaps in this?
It's really just a convenience. I mean, it's a kind of system which could be done in a different language. And I really think it would be, programmers really go to different languages for different purposes. Some for style or choice or performance. So I think with certain algorithms, you have a lot of choices on how you might want to implement them.
Yes.
And that would really be up to the implementer and what they want to do.
Yes, but I guess another angle of this is, are you using any open source libraries, right? Because Java has a lot of them, right? And that probably would make things easier if you rely on some tools.
It helps. I mean, I assume other languages, like say, well, I'm not a Python programmer. There are a lot of libraries in Python as well. So I would suspect there are other language choices that would give you similar kinds of variety. And so it really come down to one's personal choice.
Okay, so I wonder, how does this connect to another topics we discussed at a different meetup, which is functional programming? And you mentioned that you were doing functional programming before basically most people were doing functional programming, and at a very large scale.
It was very, very large scale. By today's definition, some people might call it functional programming because it was almost like a spreadsheet where the cells could change with a massive propagation. So by today's definition, it's pseudo-functional, I suppose, but it was very, very large. So it was one of those systems where you had to learn how to come up with algorithms to allow the evaluations to scale. So it was a good training grounds for thinking about, what happens at scale. And I fortunately was exposed to some people who taught me early on to think in those terms. I'm very grateful for them. There was a guy, professor at Sweden called Tore Risch, and he taught me everything I knew about scale.
How do you use these techniques in your topics project? Is it kind of inspiration? Do you use some of these approaches?
It's really a way of thinking. I think that most people, and it always changes from what people are working on, but when they're dealing with scale, they often are thinking of what would happen to something as the size changes? Where would the edges be? I mean, and scenes go larger and increase by 10 times. Sometimes they don't need to go 100 times thinking, but think it out. What would occur as scale changes? Sometimes not much. Sometimes the scale of things can have enormous effects. And I think just asking those questions, is important. And it's important to, data size, performance, maintainability. So I don't think there's anything. I don't think it's very special in the way I think about it. I think a lot of people think about it in a very similar fashion. But I do think that for all, it's good to think about those things. And if it's in a place where, excuse me, scale has been difficult, then you kind of have extra reason to be kind of really paranoid. Because in topic classification, scale has been an enormous problem. I mean, it's just, people have a lot of trouble getting things to scale and maintain.
Yes.
So
because there is the web scale, set of documents, often you need to classify.
Yeah, and in scale, even getting to 10,000 is like, notions of scale for topics is don't think in the billions. First start thinking, can you reach 100,000 to 1 million? But people have a lot of trouble even reaching, a couple of thousand is really, really difficult.
Yes, indeed. So this is a new meetup, right? And you're veterans of software industry, like you've seen different aspects. So I wonder, do you have an advice for us? How can we kind of connect academics with engineers, and what would you personally like to learn at SFText? What kind of speakers are you looking for? What would you, what are you looking for in the community?
Well, I think I have long-term interests and short-term interests. Right now, trying to get certain things off the ground, I'm more in short-term mode. Topic Scout is really not focused, it's not on NLP, that's not its basis, but I'm interested in applying more NLP to do certain things. So I would be interested in some NLP, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, because like I used some of the Gates stuff, I ran some simple tests on it, and the results were they were not that great. So for doing things like entity recognition or not, it'd be interesting, have people come in, talk about things, and see really what their experiences are, the good side and the bad side. To get, if you're a practitioner, what can you expect? And especially people who have looked at data and tried things for themselves, not just to be, really optimistic, but really try different data sets. Because some of these techniques work well on some data sets, but then work very poorly on others. So someone who could help share that with me, that would be helpful.
Great. I mean, I think that's all about, this community is about sharing experiences, sharing open source which works, right? And kind of cross-pollination. So it's, I think that we hope to achieve this goal, and it's great to have you with us, and we're looking forward to your talk.
Thank you.
Thanks.